Buckle up, everybody. Today, we're taking a deep dive into the world of Polaris Inc.
Polaris Inc.
You know, the power sports giant.
Yes.
We're going to try to unpack their business model, how they make their money, what their costs look like,
Okay.
and what makes them stand out in a really crowded power sports market.
Yeah, it's a really interesting story, and it goes beyond just like ATVs and snowmobiles.
Yeah?
Polaris has actually been quietly building a pretty diverse business for decades.
Yeah?
And they've navigated some pretty tough times along the way.
So when you think of Polaris, what comes to mind? What's like the first thing you think of?
I think of like off-road vehicles,
Yeah,
you know.
ripping through the mud,
Yeah, exactly.
snow, that
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that's their off-road segment,
Yes.
and it's their biggest moneymaker.
Yeah, their biggest revenue generator.
Yeah.
In fact, sales were up 9% in 2023. But they're not just a one-trick pony.
Okay.
They also have on-road, which is motorcycles.
Oh, yeah.
And then they have marine, which is boats.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And each of these segments is pretty diverse, too. So you have side-by-sides, snowmobiles in the off-road,
Uh-huh.
motorcycles in the on-road,
Yeah.
and even pontoon boats in the marine.
Interesting. Okay.
And then another key thing is that they also have parts, garments, and accessories, or PG&A.
Okay, so it's not just the vehicle itself. It's like the whole...
It's the whole experience, the gear.
The lifestyle. You're
Uh-huh.
selling the lifestyle.
And they're taking it a step further with vertical integration.
Okay.
So they recently acquired Walker Evans, which is a shock absorber supplier.
Interesting.
And that adds to their off-road vertical integration.
Okay.
So it gives them more control over their supply chain
Yeah.
and potentially improves their quality and their margins.
So making all this stuff can't be cheap.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that are really costing Polaris a lot of money?
Yeah. So like any manufacturer, they're facing a pretty complex landscape. But raw materials are a major factor.
Gotcha.
So think about the materials that go into these vehicles: boats, steel, aluminum, copper, resins,
Wow.
even rare earth metals.
Okay.
And these prices can swing wildly,
Yeah.
and that directly impacts Polaris's cost.
So how do they deal with that uncertainty?
Oh, yeah.
Like, you can't just stop production.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they use hedging strategies,
Nice point.
which are kind of like buying insurance
Oh, okay.
for your raw material costs.
I see.
So it's meant to protect them from sudden price increases,
That makes sense.
so they can keep producing.
Keep those vehicles rolling off the assembly line.
Exactly. And speaking of assembly lines, manufacturing itself is another big cost driver.
Yeah. I would imagine so.
Yeah. They have factories all over the world.
Wow.
So that can be great, to reach more customers.
Yeah.
But it also exposes them to risks.
Risks like...
Like supply chain disruptions. We've seen a lot of that in recent years.
Right.
Labor shortages, finding enough skilled workers, and even extreme weather events.
Wow.
Any of these can really impact their production plan.
Throw a wrench in the system.
Exactly. And they've actually been dealing with production constraints in recent years, just struggling to meet the high demand for their products.
That's interesting. So it seems like staying agile is really critical in this business.
Yeah.
What about research and development?
Yeah.
They have a reputation for innovation.
Yeah.
So I would imagine that's not a small expense.
No, R&D is a major investment for Polaris. They have over 1,400 employees dedicated to it, constantly working on new technologies and improvements.
Wow.
A big focus right now is electrification, developing electric versions of their vehicles
Okay.
to meet the growing demand for greener options.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Considering the direction of the entire industry.
Yeah,
Okay. So innovation doesn't come cheap, obviously.
definitely not. And then there's the cost of getting those vehicles in front of you, the customer.
Mm-hmm.
The power sports market is very competitive.
Oh, yeah.
So Polaris invests a lot in sales and marketing.
So all the ads you see.
Exactly. Rebates, financing programs, dealer incentives, it
Yeah.
all adds up.
It's like they're competing for your attention
Yeah.
every time you turn on the TV.
Exactly.
Okay. So we've talked about what Polaris makes
Yeah.
and what it costs them.
Mm-hmm.
What about the why? Like, why do people choose Polaris over all the other options out there?
Right. That's where the customer value proposition comes in.
Okay.
And Polaris is offering more than just a vehicle. It's an experience, a lifestyle.
Okay.
And it starts with a solid brand reputation. They've been around since 1954.
Wow.
So that history resonates with people.
Yeah. It says, hey, we've been around a while.
Exactly. It says, we know what we're doing. We're reliable.
Yeah.
You can trust us.
We've weathered some storms, some literal
Yeah.
storms. Okay.
And then they back that up with product performance.
Hmm.
Polaris vehicles are built to be durable, to handle tough conditions.
Uh-huh.
They understand their customers are passionate about adventure, about pushing limits.
So it's more than just getting from A to B. Okay,
Exactly.
yeah.
It's about the thrill of the ride.
Yeah.
And that thrill wouldn't be the same without a great customer experience.
Okay.
So Polaris has built a really strong dealer network,
Yeah.
and they really focus on providing top-notch customer service. They want to make sure you have a smooth and enjoyable experience
Yeah.
from the moment you step into the dealership.
To every ride you take.
Exactly.
So they're invested in the whole journey.
The whole customer journey.
Okay, so in a market as crowded as this one,
Yeah.
how does Polaris actually stand out? Like, what are they doing that's really different from everyone else?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we already touched on vertical integration,
Yeah.
which gives them an edge in controlling their supply chain and potentially boosting their profits. But beyond that, their commitment to innovation is a key differentiator.
So like those electric vehicles we talked about.
Exactly.
And the focus on R&D.
Yes. They're not just following trends, they're actively shaping the future of the power sports industry.
Okay.
And here's something you might not expect. They're also really focused on employee well-being.
Really? That's not something you hear a lot
No, it's true.
in the business world.
Yeah, so they believe that happy, engaged employees translate into happy, satisfied customers.
Yeah.
So they invest in competitive compensation, benefits, a positive work environment.
Okay.
And get this, their employees are actually significant shareholders in the company through their ESOP and equity compensation programs.
So they're aligning their employees' interests
Yeah.
with the company's success.
Yeah, exactly. It's like they're all in the same boat, paddling towards the same destination.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
Okay, so that brings us to another key differentiator.
Yes.
Their focus on building relationships with their customers.
Yes, it's more than just transactions.
Okay.
It's about creating a community.
So it's like a sense of belonging,
Exactly.
being part of something bigger than just owning a vehicle.
Right. And they do this through events, online platforms, and their dealer network. It's about creating a space where people who share a passion for power sports can connect, share experiences, and feel like they're part of the Polaris family.
Okay, so they're making great products, investing in innovation, treating their employees well,
Yeah.
and building a strong community around their brand.
Yes.
That's a pretty compelling formula for success. But how do they keep all these plates spinning? Like, what are the most critical operational activities that make Polaris tick?
Yeah, so that question kind of takes us behind the scenes into the engine room of this power sports powerhouse.
Okay, let's go behind the scenes.
Yeah, so while every part of the business is important, some functions are absolutely critical to keeping Polaris running smoothly.
So what are those essential functions?
Well, first and foremost, new product development is the lifeblood of any company in a fast-paced market like this.
Okay.
Polaris has to constantly innovate, bring fresh ideas and new products to market.
So they're always going to be one step ahead.
Exactly, yeah. Anticipating what customers want next.
Yeah.
And to do that, they need a steady and reliable flow of materials and components. That's where supply chain management comes in.
Yeah.
With a global manufacturing footprint, they have to manage a very complex web of suppliers and logistics.
And with all the supply chain disruptions we've seen, that must be
It's a challenge.
a huge challenge. Yeah.
They have to be agile, adaptable, and able to anticipate potential bottlenecks. And then, of course, they need to actually build those vehicles efficiently and to a high standard.
Yeah.
That's where manufacturing excellence comes in.
So having the right processes in place,
Exactly.
the right technology,
Yeah.
right people.
Yeah. To produce high-quality vehicles at scale. And then once those vehicles are built, they need to get them into the hands of customers. That's where sales and distribution become critical.
Okay.
Their robust dealer network and effective marketing efforts are key to reaching their target market.
So it's all connected.
Yeah.
From the design of the product to the moment it arrives at your door.
Yeah.
Every step has to be carefully orchestrated.
It's like a symphony of moving parts, all working together to create a seamless customer experience.
I like that.
And in today's digital world, there's another critical operational activity we need to talk about: cybersecurity.
Yes.
With their investments in connected vehicles and the increasing amount of data they're handling, Polaris has to be very vigilant about protecting themselves and their customers from cyber threats.
It makes sense. Connected vehicles are essentially computers on wheels,
Exactly.
so they're vulnerable to hacking and data breaches.
Yeah, they're taking a very proactive approach, recognizing that cybersecurity is no longer just an IT issue, but a business imperative.
So what are they doing to address these risks?
So they have a dedicated team and an executive cybersecurity council focused on prevention, detection, and response.
Okay.
They're not just reacting to threats, they're actively trying to stay ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
And what's really impressive is that their senior vice president and chief digital and information officer regularly updates the board of directors on their cybersecurity efforts.
So we're taking it seriously.
They're taking it very seriously.
It seems like Polaris is firing on all cylinders,
Mhm.
from product innovation to customer experience to operational excellence. But there's one more crucial aspect we need to dig into, and that's their financial foundation.
Yeah.
How do they manage their cash flow, their debt, and the complex accounting behind it all? That's where we'll pick things up in part 2 of our deep dive.
Stay tuned.
Welcome back to our Polaris deep dive.
Back for more.
In part 1, we talked about, how they make their money,
Yeah.
what it costs them, what makes them stand out.
Yeah.
Now we want to shift gears and talk about the financial engine that drives this power sports powerhouse.
Okay, yeah. It's like looking under the hood and understanding the mechanics of how they keep everything going.
Yeah, how they keep those wheels turning.
Yes.
So let's start with the basics.
Okay.
Where does Polaris actually get the cash it needs to operate and grow?
So their primary source of funds is their operating activities,
Okay.
which is basically the money they make from selling those awesome vehicles and boats and accessories we talked about.
Uh-huh.
But they also tap into financing activities.
Okay.
So things like borrowing money or issuing stock.
So cash flows in from sales and financing.
Right.
Then what? What do they do with all that money?
Well, they use it for a variety of things.
Okay.
Like investing in new product development, which we talked about, is crucial in this fast-paced market.
Uh-huh.
They use it for acquisitions. Remember their recent purchase of Walker Evans?
Yeah.
That was a strategic move to kind of strengthen their off-road segment. And they use cash for things like buying back their own stock and even paying dividends to their shareholders.
So it's like a financial ecosystem.
Yeah.
Cash flows in, gets invested, hopefully generates even more cash flow.
Exactly.
But I imagine it's not always smooth sailing.
You're right, there are always challenges. One interesting thing for Polaris is the seasonality of their business.
Okay.
So demand for power sports vehicles tends to fluctuate throughout the year, peaking in certain seasons.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and this means that their working capital needs, so the cash they need to keep day-to-day operations running, also goes up and down.
Okay, yeah, so if you're selling more snowmobiles in the winter,
Right.
you're going to need more cash on hand to buy parts, pay employees, and manage inventory.
Exactly.
So how do they handle those seasonal swings?
It requires careful planning and financial management.
Okay.
So they need to kind of anticipate those peaks and valleys in demand and adjust their cash flow accordingly. And this might involve things like securing lines of credit or adjusting their production schedules to make sure they have enough cash on hand when they need it.
So it's like they're constantly fine-tuning the engine to make sure it runs smoothly,
Yes.
even when the road gets bumpy.
Exactly.
Now, you mentioned stock buybacks earlier. Can you explain that a little bit? Like, why would a company buy back its own stock?
Yeah, so it can be a way to return value to shareholders.
Good.
If a company believes its stock is undervalued, meaning it's trading for less than it's actually worth, they might buy back some of those shares, which would boost earnings per share and potentially drive up the stock price.
Okay.
And Polaris has actually been actively repurchasing their stock in recent years,
Really?
which suggests they have confidence in their future prospects.
So it's almost like they're betting on themselves.
Exactly.
Now, let's talk about the flip side of cash debt.
Yeah.
Does Polaris have a lot of loans they need to pay back?
They do have some debt, but they seem to be managing it responsibly. One thing that kind of caught my eye in their financial statements is their use of finance lease obligations.
Okay.
So essentially, these are agreements where they lease equipment or facilities and make payments over time.
Okay.
And they had potential repurchase obligations of almost $500 million related to these agreements at the end of 2023.
$500 million? Wow. That's a lot.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot.
So what does that mean? Like, what does that actually mean for their financial health?
It's important to understand that these obligations are spread out over time,
Okay.
and their actual financial exposure is limited.
Okay.
So it's the difference between what a dealer owes on a repossessed product plus any acquisition costs
Okay.
and what Polaris gets when they resell the product.
I see.
And so far, they haven't incurred any significant losses from these arrangements.
That's reassuring. But managing all of these complex financial transactions
Okay.
must require some really meticulous accounting practices.
Yes, definitely. There are several key areas they focus on. First, there's revenue recognition.
Okay.
So how and when they record their sales.
Okay. For most of their products, they recognize revenue when control of the product is transferred to the customer, which is usually a dealer or a distributor.
Seems straightforward enough.
It can be, but there are nuances, especially when you factor in things like sales promotions and incentives.
Right, so like the rebates and the financing programs,
Yeah.
all those deals they offer to attract customers.
Yeah, all those promotions come with accounting implications.
Okay.
So Polaris has to carefully estimate those expenses and record them as liabilities on their balance sheet until they're actually paid out.
So they have to be really precise in their accounting to make sure their financial statements
Absolutely.
accurately reflect all of these complex transactions.
Yes, another critical area is product warranties.
Okay.
So they offer warranties on their vehicles and boats, which means they need to estimate the cost of potential warranty claims and set aside reserves to cover those costs
That makes sense. Yeah, they got to be prepared to fix things.
if they go wrong.
Exactly. And this involves making assumptions about, product defect rates, repair costs, and how many customers will actually file warranty claims.
Okay.
So it's a complex process that requires careful analysis and forecasting.
So it's not just about selling the product.
Right.
It's about accounting for the potential cost
Exactly.
that might arise later down the road.
Yes. And then there's a big one, product liability.
Okay.
This is a major concern for any company that manufactures vehicles.
Uh-huh.
And Polaris is no exception.
Yeah.
They have to be prepared for the possibility of lawsuits related to product defects or accidents.
That's a sobering thought.
Yeah, so they use a combination of insurance and their own reserves to cover potential liabilities.
Okay.
But determining how much to set aside is a complex process that involves assessing the probability and the potential cost of these claims.
Yeah.
They work with experts in law, actuarial science, and risk management to make sure they're adequately protected.
So it's like a delicate balancing act.
It is.
They need to protect themselves financially
Yeah.
while still providing high-quality products
Right.
and standing behind their warranties.
Exactly.
Sounds like a challenge.
Yeah.
There's one more accounting concept we need to touch on. Goodwill.
Okay.
Goodwill. That sounds like a positive thing.
It is. Goodwill essentially represents the value of a company's brand reputation and customer relationships.
Okay.
It's an intangible asset, but it can be a very valuable one.
So like trying to put a price tag on their loyal
Yes.
customer base and the trust they've built over the years.
Exactly, yeah. And Polaris regularly evaluates the value of their goodwill to make sure it's not overstated on their balance sheet.
Okay.
So this involves assessing their brand strength, customer loyalty, and market position.
It's like checking in to make sure their reputation is as strong as they think it is.
Exactly. It's all about ensuring that their financial statements accurately reflect the true value of their business.
Okay, so we've covered their cash flow, their debt, some key accounting practices. Now I want to zoom out a little bit
Okay.
and think about their global footprint.
Yeah.
We know they have manufacturing facilities and sales operations
Right.
all over the world.
Yeah.
What are some of the risks and challenges they face
Yeah.
operating on such a large scale?
Yeah, so operating globally definitely comes with its own set of complexities. One of the biggest risks is fluctuations in foreign currency exchange rates.
See, because they're dealing with multiple currencies.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So their profits can be impacted by changes in the value of those currencies
Uh-huh.
relative to the US dollar.
Okay.
For example, a strong dollar can hurt their profits when they sell products overseas
Uh-huh.
because their goods become more expensive for customers in those markets.
So it's like they're constantly exposed to currency risk just by doing business around the world. How do they manage that?
Well, they use foreign exchange hedging contracts.
Okay.
So think of it like buying insurance against currency fluctuation. These contracts lock in exchange rates for future transactions,
Okay.
which helps to protect them from unexpected swings in currency values.
That's clever.
Yeah.
What other challenges do they face in the global market?
Well, navigating different regulatory environments can be a major headache.
Yeah, I imagine so.
So they have to comply with a complex web of regulations in different countries, covering things like product safety, environmental standards, labor laws, and even data privacy.
Okay.
So keeping up with these ever-changing rules and ensuring compliance is a constant challenge.
It sounds like a logistical and legal
Yeah,
tightrope walk.
it can be.
Okay.
And let's not forget about the cultural and linguistic differences they encounter.
Yeah.
So managing a global workforce and tailoring their marketing efforts to different cultural contexts requires a nuanced approach and a deep understanding of local markets.
So managing a global business is kind of like juggling flaming torches while riding a unicycle.
That's a great analogy.
Impressive, but definitely not easy.
But Polaris has clearly been successful in navigating these complexities.
Yeah.
Their global footprint is a testament to their adaptability and their ability to manage these challenges.
So we've talked about their financials, their accounting, their global operations.
Yeah.
It's clear that Polaris is a complex
Yes.
and multifaceted business.
Absolutely.
But before we move on, I want to kind of step back
Okay.
and consider the bigger picture.
Yeah.
What do you think is the most important thing to understand about their overall business model?
If I had to boil it down to one key insight, it would be this. Polaris is not just a manufacturer of power sports vehicles.
Okay.
They're a company that has built an ecosystem around a lifestyle.
So it's like they're selling the feeling of freedom, adventure, exploration that their vehicles represent.
They've recognized that their customers aren't just buying a product, they're buying into an experience. And that experience is supported by their strong brand reputation, their focus on customer service, their commitment to innovation, and even their efforts to create a positive work environment for their employees.
So it's a holistic approach that encompasses the entire customer journey.
Precisely. And it's an approach that has served them well over the years.
Yeah.
But how will this model evolve in the future? How will Polaris adapt to the changing landscape of electrification, sustainability, and competition? That's what we'll explore in part 3 of our deep dive.
And we're back for the final
Part 3.
of our Polaris deep dives.
Yes.
So we've covered a lot of ground, right?
We have.
How they make their money, what it costs them, their customer appeal, even
Yeah.
how they manage their books.
All the nitty-gritty.
The nitty-gritty.
Yes.
Now it's time to look ahead.
Okay.
What does the future hold for Polaris?
Crystal ball time.
Yeah.
So, the question that everyone's asking is, how will this power sports giant adapt as the industry itself is changing?
Yeah.
Big question.
Big question. And I think the big one is electrification.
Yeah.
The auto industry is going electric.
Yeah.
Consumers are looking for greener options. How is that impacting Polaris's world?
Yeah, the power sports industry is feeling the electric surge, too. People want cleaner, more sustainable ways to enjoy the outdoors,
Makes sense.
even when it comes to their recreational vehicles.
Yeah.
And Polaris is paying attention.
Okay.
They've already dipped their toes in the water with products like the Ranger EV
Okay.
and the Livewire electric motorcycle.
Okay, so they're not just ignoring it.
No, they're not burying their heads in the sand.
But are those few products enough to stay competitive in this changing market?
That is the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
So their commitment to R&D, especially in electrification, suggests that they're serious about carving out a place in this evolving market.
Okay.
But there are hurdles. The technology itself, the charging infrastructure that's needed, and even how quickly consumers will embrace electric power sports.
Yeah, it's a balancing act.
It is.
Because they have to innovate
Uh-huh.
while also managing costs.
Yeah.
And keeping their, very loyal customer base happy.
Right.
Because a lot of these customers might not be ready to switch over
Yeah.
from their, gas-powered vehicles.
They're very attached to that rumble.
Yeah, that rumble.
Yeah.
So it's a real tightrope walk.
It is, and the stakes are high.
Yeah.
But remember, Polaris has a history of adapting and innovating.
Yeah.
I mean, they started with snowmobiles, then moved into ATVs, motorcycles, even boats.
Yeah.
They've reinvented themselves before.
So it seems like that ability to evolve is in their DNA.
Yeah, they're not afraid to try new things, push the boundaries of what's possible.
Okay, so they got electrification
Yeah.
and, sustainability
Yes.
to deal with.
Uh-huh.
What about competition?
Yeah.
Who are the other players in this space?
Right. So the traditional rivals are still there, of course.
Yeah.
Companies like BRP, Bombardier Recreational Products, and Yamaha.
Yeah.
They're investing in electric offerings too.
Okay.
But Polaris is also facing a wave of new competitors.
So you're talking about all those startups that are like
Yeah, all about electric power sports.
Okay.
So companies like Zero Motorcycles, Arcimoto, and even Tesla with its Cyberquad.
Wow.
Yeah, so these newcomers are nimble, innovative, and they're laser focused on specific niches. They're bringing fresh ideas, a different approach to the market.
So it's pressure from both sides. You got the established players
Yes.
and the disruptive startups. It's like a battle for market share.
It is a real battle, and the battleground is shifting.
Okay,
It's
yeah.
not just about horsepower and features anymore.
Yeah.
It's about sustainability, cutting-edge technology, and creating a seamless customer experience. That goes beyond just the product itself.
That brings us to another crucial aspect of their future, that evolving customer experience.
Yeah.
We talked about their focus on customer service,
Uh-huh.
their strong dealer network. But how else are they adapting to what today's consumers expect?
Well, one key area is digitalization.
Okay.
So people now expect seamless digital interactions, whether they're researching a new ATV online,
Okay.
customizing their ride, or connecting with the Polaris community.
So it's like the whole power sports experience is expanding beyond the physical ride.
Yeah.
It's becoming more connected, more interactive.
It is, and Polaris is investing in digital platforms and tools to make that happen.
Okay.
So think mobile apps that give you vehicle diagnostics, online configurators to personalize your ride, and social media communities where Polaris owners can connect and share their passion.
So it's all about creating a digital ecosystem that complements
Exactly.
and enhances that real-world power sports experience.
Yeah, and that digital ecosystem also gives Polaris valuable data.
Okay.
So by understanding how you use your products, how you interact with the brand, they can better tailor their offerings, improve their service, and even anticipate what you'll want next.
So data is becoming a key asset for them, right?
It is.
Helping them get to know their customers better and build stronger relationships.
It's driving personalization, fueling innovation, and helping them make smarter business decisions.
Okay, well, we've covered a lot in this deep dive.
Mm.
From Polaris's current business model
Yeah,
to the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead.
lots of twists and turns.
We've explored how they're adapting to electrification, embracing sustainability, enhancing the customer experience.
It's been fascinating, really peeling back the layers of this power sports powerhouse.
Yeah, and as always, the deep dive doesn't end here. We want to hear from you. What do you think?
Yeah, what are your thoughts?
Do you think Polaris is on the right track? Are they doing enough to go electric,
Yeah.
to be more sustainable?
How do you see the power sports industry evolving?
Share your insights on social media. Let's keep this conversation going.
Keep those wheels turning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Until next time, deep divers, keep exploring.